All right, let's get right into it. Most of us think that being good with money is all about being smart, right? It's about spreadsheets and data and knowing all the formulas. But what if that's mostly wrong? What if financial success has way less to do with your IQ and almost everything to do with how you behave? So get this. There's this story about a tech executive, a total genius, who designed a key part of the Wi-Fi routers we all use. He was incredibly successful, but his relationship with money was, well, it was just nuts. He'd carry around huge wads of cash, and one time he bought thousands of dollars in gold coins. So what did he do with them? He took his friends to a dock and, yeah, they just skipped him across the ocean like rocks, just for the fun of it. And not surprisingly, he went completely broke not long after. Now, that story might sound a little out there, but it perfectly sets the stage for a really fascinating paradox about money. And we can see it play out in the true stories of two totally different guys. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. On one hand, you've got Ronald Reed. He was a janitor and a gas station attendant his whole life. He quietly saved the little money he made, put it into good, solid stocks, and then he just waited for decades. When he passed away, this humble janitor left over $8 million to charity. Then, on the other hand, you have Richard Fiscone, the exact opposite. Harvard-educated, a top executive at a huge firm. He was at the absolute peak of the financial world. He lived large, borrowed a ton of money, and when the 2008 crash hit, poof, it was all gone, total bankruptcy. So a janitor with no training ends up a multi-millionaire philanthropist, and the Harvard-educated finance pro loses everything. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. So how on earth is that even possible? Well, the answer comes down to this really simple but powerful idea. When it comes to your money, what you know doesn't matter nearly as much as how you act. And that's really the core idea of the book, The Psychology of Money. See, finance isn't a hard science. It's more like a soft skill. It's all about psychology. It's about things like your patience, your ego, your greed, your humility. Ronald Reed, the janitor, he was incredibly patient. Richard Fiscone, the executive, he was incredibly greedy. And that gap in their behavior turned out to be way more important than any gap in their education or their resumes. I mean, really think about that for a second. Can you imagine a janitor performing a better heart surgery than a Harvard-trained surgeon? Of course not. Or an amateur building a safer skyscraper than a top engineer? No way. But in the world of investing, it happens all the time. The lines get blurry because your behavior can completely trump your intelligence. But behavior isn't the only wild card in the deck. Let's talk about luck. Pure, random, dumb luck. Back in 1968, there were about 303 million high school-aged kids in the world. And out of all those millions, guess how many went to a high school that actually had a computer? Pretty much none. Except Bill Gates did. The odds of that happening were literally 1 in a million. But here's the thing about luck. It has a sibling, and its name is risk. At that same school, Bill Gates had a best friend, Kent Evans. He was just as brilliant, just as obsessed with that computer. They were going to start a company together. But before he could even graduate, Kent died in a mountaineering accident. The odds of that happening were also, you guessed it, about 1 in a million. You see, it's the exact same force, with the same power, just pointed in opposite directions. It's a humbling reminder that our outcomes aren't just the result of our own efforts. Okay, so once you start to appreciate the huge roles that behavior and luck play, it leads you to this next critical idea, the massive difference between making money and keeping it. These sound like they should be the same thing, but they are two completely different skills. In fact, they often require opposite traits. Getting wealthy, that usually takes optimism, taking some big risks, really putting yourself out there. But staying wealthy, oh, that's a whole different game. That takes humility. It takes a healthy fear, a little bit of paranoia even, that everything you've gained could disappear just as fast as it came. It's all about survival. This reminds me of this incredible story. So, the author Kurt Vonnegut was at a party thrown by a billionaire hedge fund manager. At one point, Vonnegut leans over to his friend, the author Joseph Heller, and says, "You know, that billionaire host of ours made more money yesterday than you've made from your novel Catch-22 in its entire history." And Heller, without missing a beat, just replies, "Yes, but I have something he will never have. Enough." And that is everything, isn't it? The concept of enough. It's so hard because there's always someone with more. Social comparison is a game you can't win. And the danger is when you keep moving the goalposts, when your appetite for more stuff grows faster than your satisfaction, you end up taking crazier and crazier risks for things you don't even need. So if the key is survival and knowing what enough is, then what's the actual engine that builds real, long-lasting wealth? Well, this chart of Warren Buffett's net worth tells the whole story. Of his roughly $84.5 billion, almost all of it, like $84.2 billion, was earned after his 50th birthday. It's just wild. Our brains literally aren't wired to understand how powerful compounding is. Look, nobody's denying that Buffett is a brilliant investor, but if you only focus on his annual returns, you're missing the most important lesson. His real secret, his true superpower, isn't just his skill, it's his timeline. He's been investing consistently since he was 10 years old. He has survived every crash, every recession, every panic for decades, without getting scared and pulling out. He just let the clock do the work. So all of this begs a really big question. What's the point? What is all this for? Why build wealth in the first place? Is it just so you can buy more stuff, bigger houses, faster cars? Well, the research points to a much deeper, much more satisfying answer. There was a psychologist named Angus Campbell, and he spent his entire career trying to figure out the real ingredients of happiness. And what he found was that the single most dependable predictor of happiness wasn't your income or your house or the prestige of your job. It was this: having a strong sense of controlling your own life. And that, right there, is the ultimate purpose of money. It's the final takeaway. The real value of wealth isn't the stuff it can buy. It's the control it gives you over your own time. The freedom to wake up in the morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That feeling of autonomy, that is the highest dividend money will ever pay you. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. True wealth is often invisible. It's the fancy car not bought, the designer clothes passed over. It's the unspent money in the bank that gives you options, flexibility, and freedom. See, being rich is loud. It's about showing off what you have. But wealth is quiet. So the question is, which one are you really building?